Welcome, everyone. If you're here, this is the CELT Teaching Fellows Information Session. If you want a copy of the slides, you can scan that QR code, or like I just said, there's a link in the chat. Before I get started, I'm going to pass it over to Curtis Maloli for a few welcoming remarks.
Thanks, Jackie. And thanks everybody for being here and being part of this. I see a lot of familiar faces. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Curtis Maloli, and I'm the Director of Teaching Development and Digital Learning within the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. And thank you for being here. This is a really important program for us at the center, but also I think for TMU more widely. It's a really important part of what we do, and I think especially right now at this moment in higher education, when everyone is trying to make sense of what generative AI might mean for learning and teaching, and I think as a consequence, it's a really good moment for us to be investing in evidence-informed teaching practices, which is something that Jackie is leading at our center, and you'll get to hear from him in a second and all the different things that he's been leading. But really the goal of this program is to give faculty the resources, the time and space, um, and the community to be able to experiment with teaching practices, to ask meaningful questions about their teaching, and really to lead innovation across the university. So Jackie will break down how that all works in the program, but we also have Terry Peters, who you can see on the screen here, who's one of our teaching fellows, and Yukari Seiko as well, another teaching fellow. And just to say a few things, because I've had a chance to get to know them and work with them for the last few years. Yukari's been doing really groundbreaking research around graduate student supervision, so much so that she's not only publishing on it, but that we're developing a program alongside Yukari at the center that is informed by her pedagogical research. Terry and I were both in Saskatoon this year at the Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, and she's been engaged with and leading conversations around architectural education nationally. So, and I guess internationally too, in Chicago, right, Terry? Was it Chicago? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
Chicago.
like, really high impact, evidence-informed kind of practices that this program has been leading to. Jennifer Poole is another one of our teaching fellows, a past teaching fellow. She just won a provincial teaching award from Okufa for her groundbreaking research. Alyssa Council in the psychology department is doing her sabbatical in Calgary and leading discussions about statistics education at the University of Calgary, at Mount Royal University. So the program has really been leading to impactful and I hope innovative and transformative change, both for TMU and hopefully across Canada. So it's a great program. We have tons of support for fellows, and Jackie and the rest will let you know all about it. So thank you for being here, and I'll throw it to you, Jackie.
Awesome. Thanks, Curtis. So my name is Jackie Dang. I hold a PhD in chemistry education research from the University of Ottawa. I'm an educational developer on Curtis's team in the Teaching Development and Digital Learning team at the CELT, the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. Like Curtis mentioned, I lead the Teaching Fellows Program, but I also support a lot of the stuff that we do related to this to the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, so SoTL at TMU. And then I'm also an associate editor for the Canadian Journal for the Scholarship for Teaching and Learning. And so I wear a few different hats, but SoTL is really my jam, and I think that's a big focus of the Teaching Fellows Program. He, him pronouns. Sorry, I should have said that as well. The plan for today's session, I'm going to go over the Teaching Fellows Program and how to apply, what we're looking for, I think, on the adjudication committee in terms of applications. And then we'll transition over in the latter half to a panel discussion with Dr. Yukari Seiko and Dr. Terry Peters, who are two. Yukari is a past teaching fellow, but is still highly engaged with the center. And Terry is a present teaching fellow. And folks, feel free to throw any questions at any point in the chat. I'll be trying my best to monitor that as we go through. There will also be questions at the end if you want to save questions for the Q&A section. So what is the Teaching Fellows Program? So the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching's Teaching Fellows Program celebrates and supports faculty at TMU committed to teaching excellence and transformative evidence-informed pedagogy. This is a 3-year fellowship, and so Fellows get a chance to lead a Scholarship of Teaching and Learning research project and gain access to exclusive professional development opportunities to connect with other educational leaders, both at TMU and across Canada. And I'll talk about some of the ways that we're doing that at the CELT, deepen their pedagogy, and enhance their educational leadership skills. So the one big change I think I want to highlight here is that in the past, the fellowship has been a 2-year fellowship, but with some input from our past and present fellows and also from members of our CELT team, we are moving towards a 3-year fellowship now. And I'll talk about how that changes the timeline a bit for the fellowship moving forward. So as part of the program, fellows participate in the community of practice focused on scholarly teaching and SoTL. So this is a monthly community practice where all the fellows get together and myself, and we really just dive into pressing topics that we think are relevant to the work that we do in SoTL. And so most recently, we've been following more of a journal club structure or sorry, a literature discussion structure where each fellow will sign up for a month, pick a journal article or a selection of journal articles that focus on a particular topic, and then we'll all get together and discuss that article and that overarching topic. And so this most recent discussion was focused on psychological safety as it pertains to teaching innovations. And so how do we balance, introducing innovations in our classrooms with preserving and supporting psychological safety amongst students. And so that was led by Dr. Alyssa Council. Um, You also get the chance to collaborate with other fellows and CELT staff to co-create teaching and professional development resources. I think Yukari is sort of the exemplar for that amongst the fellows. So doing her project as a teaching fellow, but then continuing to work with the CELT to develop a solution-focused graduate supervision course. You get a chance to develop your SoTL knowledge and skills, not just through your project, but through dedicated workshops and seminars. I'll talk about that on the coming slide. And then just in terms of funding and logistics, you receive $11,000 Canadian in research funding over a 3-year fellowship period to support your SoTL work, along with a course release for 1 semester. Great. These are our teaching fellows, and so I won't go through all the names because they're on the slide, but I think one thing I really wanted to highlight here is that we are discipline agnostic. So SoTL is really for anyone in any discipline. We have folks from marketing, like Dr. Eugene Chan, Alyssa's from psychology, Terry Peters from architectural science. And so no matter what discipline you're in, we all teach. We all are interested in learning about our teaching and becoming better educators. And so it doesn't matter what discipline you're from. You can conduct SoTL and you can apply for this fellowship. These are some of the highlights from this past year. And so this past year, we started something called the 3M National Teaching Fellowship, 3M National Teaching Fellows Seminar Series. So if you're not familiar with the 3M National Teaching Fellowship, it's sort of the preeminent teaching award in Canada. It's a national award. About 10 fellows are selected each year from applicants across Canada, across the country. And we started the seminar series this year where we invited folks who have been recipients of the 3M National Teaching Fellowship to come and give seminars at TMU. And in addition to those seminars, they would come and have conversations with the teaching fellows here at TMU. And so this is a photo from when Dr. Alison Flynn from the University of Ottawa came to visit. And you can see that we're in a conversation with her. You can see Terry there, and then Alyssa peeking behind Curtis there. So really great opportunities to connect with people from across Canada who are doing SoTL work and who are really educational leaders in Canadian higher ed. Other highlights include conference opportunities. And so at TMU's Learning and Teaching Conference in May, the teaching fellows were part of a panel discussion on SoTL. And so that's Dr. Lin Dong, Dr. Eugene Chan, Dr. Dana Osborne, and Dr. Alyssa Council there. Like Curtis mentioned, one of our fellows this year, Dr. Terry Peters, attended the STLHE conference in Saskatoon, so the Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Education. So that's a really great place for folks who are interested in deepening their SoTL work and connecting with other SoTL scholars in Canada to present their work and to connect with people. Um, Dr. Alyssa Council is also part of SoTL Canada as one of their writing groups. And so SoTL Canada is sort of like I guess, the professional network for SoTL scholars in Canada. And so they have these writing groups that you can be a part of where you work towards developing resources for the broader SoTL community in Canada. So Alyssa's working on, I think, a guide on REB in SoTL, so research ethics, which is going to be very useful, I think, for many people across Canada. And my personal favorite highlight is that we had a potluck recently for our final summer community practice, and I thought that was a really great way to just build relationships, build the community here that we have um, within the fellows, within the collection of fellows, and then also it was just really good food. It was all like coincidentally Southeast Asian themed, so it all worked out really nicely. So this is in addition to the wonderful opportunities, professional opportunities, you get to really meet some really great people and share some good food. So. So let's get down into the nitty-gritty. What do you need to submit as part of your application? So the first thing is a SoTL research proposal. Um, these slides are all shared, or all these links are in the slide deck, and so if you have a copy of that, you'll be able to navigate to the links directly. I'll put the collection of links in the chat again if people want to take a look. But the first thing is the research proposal. And you might be wondering at this point, what is SoTL? And so I'll just give a quick overview of what SoTL is for those who may not be as familiar or just so we're all on the same page. SoTL has been defined in many different ways. And so some people have defined it as a synthesis of teaching, learning, and research in post-secondary education that brings a scholarly lens, the curiosity, the inquiry, the rigor, the disciplinary perspectives, and the attention to larger conversations to what happens when learning happens or doesn't. Other folks have described it as any scholarship, research, or inquiry activities with a focus on supporting student learning. And then inquiry focused on student learning, it looks at disciplinary knowledge and skills and the cultivation of attitudes or habits connected to learning. It is grounded in the disciplinary, institutional, environmental, or cultural context in which learning is taking place. So there are these 6 key tenets of SoTL projects. They are focused on improving student learning and educational experiences. They involve students as partners in inquiry and learning. They're guided by questions that are grounded in local context and current knowledge. And so thinking deeply about the courses that you teach or the institutional context of TMU and the students who attend TMU. They're conducted using sound and ethical methods. And so qualitative methods, quantitative methods, mixed methods. These are some examples of approaches that are common to SoTL. It's not scholarship unless you begin to share your work, and so sharing your findings with others, both other SoTL researchers and educators. So thinking not just about the research implications of your projects, but also the teaching implications. So how does this affect practice? And then including a clearly defined research lens. Like I mentioned earlier, SoTL is open to any discipline. We all teach, and so we might approach research questions in different ways, but it's important when you conduct a SoTL project or when you're preparing your SoTL research proposal to be very clear about the lens that you're taking and approaching your work. And you'll sort of see this reflected in the projects that have existed in the Teaching Fellows Program. Historically, people are coming at their projects in very different ways, but one thing you'll notice is that they all very clearly articulate the lens and the approach that they're taking. Proposals must speak to one or more priority focus areas, and so I'm not going to read all of these, but the big addition here for this cohort is uh, the teaching and learning of generative artificial intelligence. So at least one of this year's cohort's fellowships will focus on teaching and learning with Gen AI. And so if you have an idea or have some sort of innovation or just want to explore something in your classroom related to Gen AI, this is an opportunity to do that. All right, so what are we looking for? What makes a strong SoTL research proposal? If you go to or actually I won't pull it up, but basically this link will take you to a template. And so one thing that we've done this year to help facilitate the application process for folks is create templates for people to sort of fill in. And in those templates, you'll also find some prompts. And so actually, let me just pull this up so people can take a look. Uh, oh, yeah, you should all. Do you all see the template on screen? Yeah. Okay. So this is the research proposal template. We're asking folks to include a project overview / abstract, an introduction, research questions, methods, impact on teaching and learning, dissemination plan, and then the personal positionality statement with references. And so we've included some prompts and things to consider in each of these sections to help you sort of focus your proposal. So hopefully that's helpful for you as you prepare your proposal. Let's go back to the slides. Great. So introduction and context, thinking about what teaching challenge you're trying to address and why it matters. Research questions, what are your goals, your questions that will guide the investigation? What methods and data will you draw on to answer these questions, and what is your timeline? What is the impact on TMU teaching and learning or beyond? What is your plan for disseminating results? And so what specific journals are you hoping to publish in? What conferences might you be interested in presenting at? Personal positionality statements. So how have your experiences as an instructor led to this research, and why are you uniquely positioned to carry out this project? And how does your project and its goals fit within the existing literature? Any questions so far, folks, before we continue on? Again, you're also always welcome to throw things in the chat. All right, so in terms of timeline, like I mentioned earlier, this is now a 3-year fellowship, and the reason for that was because we noticed that one of the big things that was sort of holding people up um, in the previous fellowship timeline was the research ethics process. And so most likely, because most SoTL projects deal with collecting or collect data from students, projects will likely have to go through a research ethics board review. Um, and so in year one, we've sort of built this in now. So year one, we're really just giving you the time and space you need to secure research ethics board approval for your project. There's also a new research ethics in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning guide that's been created by the Research Ethics Board. So that's a really great resource if you are curious about the things you need to think about when preparing a research ethics application for SoTL research. Once you've done that in that first year, year two can be all about completing your data collection and analysis. And then year three will be dissemination. So publishing a public report on your fellowship project that we'll share on the Teaching Fellows webpage, hosted on the TMU Library's RShare repository. And then you'll also have a chance to give a presentation or workshop based on your project in the final year of your program. There is some flexibility built in here because we know that research doesn't always go the way we anticipate it to go. And so if you need, a little bit of extra time to wrap up your analysis and data collection, that's okay. If your research ethics board approval doesn't come through until, let's say, like the first half of year two, that's also okay. But we really built in this extra year to make sure that folks had a bit more time to get each of these stages completed effectively. If you are wanting to learn more about the basics of SoTL, last year we organized a series of SoTL workshops, introductory SoTL workshops. And so these are all available as video recordings on our SoTL resources page, where you'll also find a bunch of other resources on SoTL. That's also in the many links in the chat, and you can also scan the QR code on the right there. So the playlist in particular has videos on introduction to SoTL, quantitative methods in SoTL, qualitative methods in SoTL. Trying to remember some of the other ones. Disseminating your research findings in SoTL. They're all led by me or all facilitated by me. So if you have any feedback, feel free to let me know. All right, the next piece of the application is your project budget. And so I won't spend too much time on this because most of this is on the website. But funds can be used to hire research assistants, at least 75%. So of the 11,000, that would be 8,250. 5% can be used to promote your SoTL work to colleagues and peers. 5% can be used to cover materials and related costs. And then up to 15% can be used to cover travel and conference participation. Again, we do have a template for this. And so make sure you use that template when you're preparing your budget, and make sure to review the budget and eligible expenses section of the website to ensure your proposed costs are eligible. The last two pieces of your application are your CV and then a letter of support from your dean. So I'm going to combine my advice into one slide here. These are really opportunities for you to demonstrate your teaching excellence and leadership. And so thinking about questions like what evidence can I share that demonstrates my teaching impact? These could be things like evidence of student learning, evaluations, awards you've received in the past, peer feedback. What sorts of leadership roles have you held related to teaching and learning? Have you designed curricula? Have you mentored uh, other colleagues or students? Program developments and committee work related to teaching and learning? What innovations in teaching have you implemented? New courses, pedagogical approaches, technology, inclusive practices. These are all examples, by the way, so you don't have to speak to all of these. These are just some examples that you might consider including in your CV or highlighting in your letter. What contributions have you made to SoTL or educational development? And so publications, conference presentations, workshops, and grants that you've received. What examples show your influence beyond your classroom? So supporting your colleagues, shaping policy, participating in institutional initiatives. And what professional development have you pursued to grow as an educator or scholar? And so these could be certificates, including some of the ones here at the CELT that we offer, fellowships, training, ongoing learning. I will pause here for questions if anyone has any questions at this point. But if not, I will keep going. All right, let's keep going. This is an overview of the timeline. So applications opened on September 29th, and then they will close on Halloween, October 31st at 5 p.m. In November, we'll be adjudicating them, the applications. And then on December 5th is when we're hoping to announce the new cohort of teaching fellows. And then January 2026, we'll host a fellows kickoff session. And I see a question from Tatiana. Any recommendations on or advice on how to capture evidence of student learning? Yeah, that's a good question. So some common measures or common examples of this might be, conducting a survey in your class on something that you've done in your course, or just any way that you're, trying to get feedback from students and sort of collecting that feedback uh, is one example. Um, Other folks I've seen have drawn on the student evaluations of teaching. Um, Other, I guess, awards could be one example. Peer feedback, and so maybe you had a teaching observation done in the past, and so you can include that as evidence of student learning and impact. Does that help at all? Are those resonating with you? Okay, great. And if anyone here needs any like support with their application or has any questions, I'm always happy to chat in a one-on-one meeting. Um, yeah, there's nothing stopping you from reaching out to me and getting in touch. So always feel free to reach out. All right. We will now move over. Sorry, I was thinking about inviting more questions, but again, if people have any questions, just put them in the chat. But in the meantime, I think what we'll do now is switch over to the panel discussion with the teaching fellows. So I would like to introduce once again Dr. Yukari Seko and Dr. Terry Peters. And folks, if you're interested, you're also welcome to throw your questions to Dr. Seko and Dr. Peters in the chat, or you can use this Slido link and join at slido.com. But for now, I will start us off by asking the first question. So let's go back to, oh, I've lost. Let's go back here. So maybe I'll start with this question. So Terry and Yukari, if both of you could share with us what your project is about and why you decided to investigate it through a teaching fellowship. I'll put every question in the chat. Yukari, or Terry, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. Hi, everyone. As Jackie mentioned, I'm in the Department of Architectural Science. And after many years of coordinating second year studio, I was beginning to have questions about understanding the student experience in studio spaces in our building, like the actual impact of the space and the student experience, especially relating to collaboration and like professional identity building. So my project is kind of on that exact topic. I called it Student Success Through Improved Studio Environments. But really what I think it's doing is taking my research area, which is how architecture and buildings impact people in terms of health and well-being, in terms of productivity and experience, and trying to sort of bridge to my curiosity around my teaching, and so connect to the student experience. So I'm combining architecture and building science research methods. And one of the things that I'm doing is drawing and analyzing and understanding the different studio spaces in a few different schools across Canada, and trying to understand what the spaces are like, how people use them, and how they feel about them, and thinking about how that connects to the student experience. So that's sort of the broad overall idea of what my research project is about.
Awesome. Thanks, Terry. Yukari, do you want to share?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Some of you may know me. I'm Yukari. I'm at the Professional Communication Department and pronoun she, her. So my project actually started in 2020. And then before coming to this university, I was working at the hospital where I studied about a particular communication technique called solution-focused communication, which focuses on how to enhance people's strengths. And then, instead of like focusing on problem, how to focus on the solutions. And I was thinking when I come to TMU, I was like, oh, this is actually very suitable for graduate student supervision, because we tend to focus on the problems, but in reality, there's a lot of student strengths and assets we can magnify, amplify, and students have a lot of agency. So there you go. We kind of started creating about if it's possible to have this strengths-based, solution-focused communication technique into the supervisor-student training or supervisor-student relationship. Then in 2020, I got a small grant from SoTL, which is learning and teaching grant. Then my fellowship was 2022 to 2023. I was one of the inaugural teaching fellow. So mine is building upon this first small LTG, learning and teaching grant, and try to expand it so that I can test it out with not just for the supervisors, but also the graduate students. And, and the time comes forward, now I was able to have such a great relationship with SALT. So like I was very curious if it's effective, and I didn't even think about this is going to be the important part of my research and teaching portfolio. But in a way, starting from this, how this communication works in this context, then here I am. It's like, it's been a strong relationship and very fruitful. I feel like I answer other questions, Jackie.
No, that's all good. That's perfect. I think the one thing that really stands out to me here is that, your projects are very different because you come from very different disciplines, but they both focus on student learning and student experience, which I think is key to SoTL. So uh, that really, I think, hammers home the idea that anyone can, from any discipline, can partake in SoTL. It's just a matter of thinking about how the project focuses on student learning. Question here in the Q&A. How did you learn how to do SoTL?
I can take a stab at that.
Sure.
I think not in the way that I thought. I feel like when I was doing my mid-term tenure package, like mid tenure package, putting that together and thinking about my teaching statement more, and then in parallel taking the faculty success program that was offered, I was thinking about finding evidence to support some of my ideas about teaching. And I think that I thought that a lot of it didn't apply to architecture, or architecture was very unique and different and just did not apply to stuff I was reading. And I was thinking about that. And then during the first year of my teaching fellow program, I've just all of a sudden been, I guess I have the time. And I hired a research assistant to assist with this as well, and just found out like what is the state of the art in my field, but also in the field of teaching. So I guess I learned how to do SoTL by realizing that it wasn't about my discipline. I know that sounds really obvious, but I was super slow to catch on to that. I had to realize that like it's all of the all of us that teach, which is like pretty much everyone who's a researcher at the university has some teaching. And I think I was just connecting to this discipline that I didn't know was its own discipline. So I guess I learned through reading a lot of papers and broadening my search beyond architecture, obviously, which took a long time to kind of sink in, and then looking at all this amazing research and literature in chemistry education, in law, in nursing, in marketing. It was like mind-blowing. So it's like I discovered so much about why students experience and teachers experience different things in the classroom with different methods and different techniques. So I think it's a great question. And I think if you're like me and you didn't really come with a background of what this is, like scholarly teaching, discipline specific educational research, and then also like overall scholarship of learning and teaching, I think it takes a little while to have this space and the right mind frame to sort of like find that.
Thanks, Sarah. That definitely resonates with me too, because as someone from chemistry education, just being in the room with you and all the other fellows, like the conversations that we have, we all approach the conversation in very different ways. But I do find that there are a lot of parallels, like you're talking about. It's cool to see how, something that might work in architectural science could be applied to chemistry education. So
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally relate. Like evidence-based teaching. In terms of SoTL, research is research to me, and I'm from the communication and, social science and humanities background. Doing a survey, program evaluations, all kind of things are just to be part of my scholarship. But once it comes to the scholarship of teaching and learning, suddenly the power relationships and power dynamics comes to fore. If I wanted to know about students' experiences, I have to be very mindful of where am I at and how much power I have, and what's potential like potential forcing students to give me a good feedback because of this, power imbalance and stuff like that. And then, like I think maybe it's great that I'm a part of the Research Ethics Board member, and we created pedagogical research guidelines last year. So this is really like, how do we do the SoTL is very interesting question in that as we learn by doing. Because SoTL, as Telly said, I did not know there are so many journals that dedicated just to the education. And I published in a Communication Teacher, which is a journal, peer-reviewed journal. I did not know it exists. But, it's just not us thinking deeply about education as a profession. And sometimes we kind of wonder like why we are just so disciplinary trained in silos, but we actually doing the teaching, which is our common denominators, like almost the biggest common denominator. How are we going to think about students' experiences, how we can transfer some of the knowledges, how we can mobilize students' assets and strengths. All these questions are so universal. And the teaching fellowship actually taught me that we are actually thinking about the same questions regardless of the disciplines, regardless of the content we teach. That's all applicable to all of us. So how did you learn how to do SoTL? I'm learning it. I'm learning it a lot. And it's really lovely to have this interdisciplinary conversation beyond our silos.
Awesome. Thanks, Yukari. That's really insightful. Let's move on to another question. Maybe we can, let's just move on to the next one. So what is the experience of being a teaching fellow meant for you personally and professionally? So maybe each of you could share like why you decided to apply to the fellowship, and then since being a fellow, how has the experience been, and how has it sort of shaped your scholarship?
I think the experience of being a teaching fellow, I think, came at the right time in my career at TMU. I was just in the process of getting tenure and thinking about my sabbatical, and sort of a couple of different research projects were kind of wrapping up. So I felt like I had the time to take on something else. And maybe the kind of self-imposed pressure to get the publications out for these grants that were kind of wrapping up, that sort of was one thing, and I could kind of move to something that I had been kind of thinking about for a long time, which was this teaching project. So I think the timing of it was right for me, although I do not think I'm adhering to the 2-year timeline of the teaching fellow program when I joined it. I think I'm more in the 2.5 because of the education part that I mentioned earlier. But I think that the best part of it so far for me has been the weekly sessions that we all meet and have that community within the university. It made me sort of thinking towards the future and my future career after sabbatical and getting tenure and things, and thinking like, what kinds of different relationships do I want to have with scholars across campus? How can what I'm doing make an impact in different ways instead of sort of very narrowly focused on I feel like my first 5 years had been quite narrow, and so having the opportunity to kind of step back, and I think the one of the funnest and best things was the Saskatoon conference. The STLAT conference was pretty cool and made me think this might be something like looking into evidence-informed teaching and contributing to the SoTL community might be something that's the right fit for me kind of moving forward, and something I can continue with. So my husband jokes that I'm going to be a senior SoTL scholar, or senior SoTL fellow, because by the time I finish all of these mini projects that I want to do, you guys are going to have to invent a senior fellow program for people that just can't let go.
Yeah.
So I think it has been, it came at the right time in my teaching and research, and I can see kind of a future in this direction. And it definitely came out of this fellowship program. I really came in not really knowing what this field was all about.
Awesome. Thanks, Terry. Yukari?
Yeah, the most rewarding moment. So I really appreciate it. I was inaugural fellow, meaning that we started just 3 of us, and then after 6 months, other second round of fellows come in, and then like the community gets bigger and bigger. But when we started, like we just small group. And then I feel like this long-term relationships as people come in and girls and having lots of great conversations was most rewarding moment. And if I can highlight one specific moment, this year we are able to create a course, like professional development course out of my teaching fellowships, all these things. And I don't think I was able to do this just by myself. I did not know creating a teaching module is such a hard work. And like it's like a lot of you have to take a lot of brain space. But I was so lucky to have, of course, Jackie, but also other educational developer coming from SALT, and Curtis has been so supportive. And once I finished, like everything is put on the D2L, we're like, okay, finally done. And I'm so happy that the moment, all the things I was trying to do past since 2020 to 2022 to 23 teaching fellowships. Now we have concrete outcome. So I agree with you, Telly. It's really, really difficult to let it go. Like, because it's so exciting and like, it can evolve and it's getting bigger. So I would say if I'm gonna highlight the moment, it's the moment when D2L module was established. But like there are many, many great moments that I learned from, thank you, Curtis, that I learned from different, people from the different discipline. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like any research, right? Like you start off with a proposal and a specific set of research questions, but things happen during the data collection section period where you have more questions than you started off with, and it sort of just snowballs from there. So you always, I think, especially with teaching and learning, there's always going to be more questions, always things to think about. So, um, question in the Q&A: how does the LTG, so the Learning and Teaching Grants, research experience differ from the fellowship? So Terry and Yukar, I'm not sure if either of you have held an LTG, but if you
Yeah.
have, maybe you could comment on this question.
As I said, like my teaching fellowship is actually based on my LTG. LTG is 1 year. I feel like I need more time. LTG is great to set up the foundations, and maybe that's why I was successful for the teaching fellowship. And I try to, of course, like expand it, change the angle, but like I know the basic information and literature review of what I want to do in a teaching fellowship. So different, it's longer, and you can be more things. It can be much more things, and you have in a LTG, you don't have other teaching fellows that you meet monthly and work together. But I feel like, my LTG really helps to shape my application. How about you, Telly?
For me, the difference was when I did a learning and teaching grant, I felt like it was quite easy to formulate the question that I wanted to ask, which was around the student experience of using environmental simulation tools. So it was quite connected to my research area. And I had a feeling that teaching students to get feedback from the real world to inform their simulations would make them learn in a better way and be less scared of using the environmental simulation software. So I didn't really overthink the research question. I just had a research question and I was like, I'm going to do this learning and teaching grant. I had a collaborator in the department. We worked on creating a kind of protocol and tested it. And I didn't kind of overthink it. There wasn't really time. It was only a year, I believe. This was a few years ago now. So I think it was quite different because it was just a small research project, which was really enjoyable. And I guess made me start to look into different research directions and connecting the teaching research and my discipline specific research.
Thank you. Yeah, I can comment on this a bit too. And Curtis, if you have any thoughts from your perspective, feel free to chime in. But I think the big thing for me, yeah, one is the length of time. So I think with the 3-year fellowship, you can obviously just explore bigger questions because you have a bit more time to dive into those questions. And then also with the fellowship, it's not just the project that you're working on, like the LTG. There's, I think, pretty much just focused on the project that you're carrying out. With the fellowship, it's the community practice, it's the ability to participate in these very tailored experiences like the seminars and workshops that we've been offering for the fellows specifically. One thing that we're trying to do this year is really to give our fellows an opportunity to share their work outside of TMU, and so connecting them with other institutions so that the fellows can go off and become educational leaders themselves or be educational leaders themselves. So it's both a research opportunity, but also, I think, a professional development opportunity.
Yeah, I think I would just, I mean, I think you nailed it there, Jackie. But obviously, as Jackie was saying, scholarship of teaching and learning is really the focus of the fellowship. And then educational leadership and being a leader at TMU, and then more broadly, representing TMU as a leader in educational um, research. So it's a bigger picture, whereas the LTG is a much smaller, very project focused kind of thing.
Thanks, Curtis. Hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, feel free to let us know. This was one that I really wanted to ask, and I think Curtis wanted to ask as well. So in what ways has the fellowship experience changed how you think about your discipline, your department, or higher education more broadly? I think you may have both touched on this a little bit, but get your thoughts on that.
I think the interdisciplinary part of it has been a big thing for me. I think I hope that we can, as we're faced with different kinds of educational challenges, like as a university, and opportunities, including generative AI and other things that we talk about and think about, I think that bridging between the disciplines and really thinking more broadly about, I think it was in one of the teaching seminars from one of the 3M fellows, they said something that really struck me. It was that in my case, it's not that they're architecture students, they're students, right? First and foremost, they're students learning something. And we're teachers teaching them something, right? So kind of looking at what strategies and evidence-informed strategies and common sense, logical, compassionate, smart strategies for teaching people can work across disciplines. So I've been really encouraged by different events on campus for learning and teaching that bring together people from different departments, like the Teaching Fellows Program, like the annual conference, some of the online workshops, although it is challenging to be interactive in a kind of these online sessions. But I think more conversations and more bridging between different disciplines, I think, would be my kind of thinking on that. I don't know if that really answered your question.
No, it does. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So because my research focuses on the supervisors across campus and, regardless of their disciplines, I learned that as I say, it's a common denominator. We have lots of common anxiety, common stress, and common desire to support graduate students to be successful. So I learned that, it's beyond the discipline that we have the passion and the thirst to be a good educator, good mentor, and we don't have such training as yet to share and don't have a space, especially for the graduate supervisions or whatnot, to freely talk out what type of challenges we face and how we're gonna be a better educator to, so that we can better support changing demographic, students, the increasing diverse student at the TMU. So I kind of feel it's very, I would say I was very happy to learn that it's just not me thinking about, oh, it's so difficult to do the graduate supervisor, number one. But I also learned that a lot of disciplinary differences. For example, me being a creative school, our department, our a master's program structure is quite different. I'm pretty sure with TELIs, and of course different from STEMs. PhD and a master's level supervision is different. So it's kind of my experience highlighted in the similarities and differences and the changing landscape of higher education. I feel like from my interviews with supervisors and students, I learned a lot about, very stressful situation graduate students have to go through, and also lots of pressure these supervisors impose on themselves and embody it, like being a 10-year track faculty or even becoming a senior, and lots of, it's a service, is a graduate supervision service or research, or how
Right.
you're going to make a balance between that, even though I think we have to be very clear that our job is to teach students, support them to success in their discipline. So I do learn a lot from this fellowship experience, and also I'm very grateful. CELT has so many things going on which I did not know. So many workshops, so many resources, so many things. And I was like, oh, do I have this one? And do I have to make it from scratch? Most of the time, 99% of the time, CELT already have a list of resources. So I didn't have to go twice. I just had to check somebody and say, hey, do you have any training resources for my teaching assistant, for example? And they have a bunch of them, and I can just follow it. So I think like it's a lot of like discovery, what's available for us, and sometimes we just don't realize it. Yeah.
Thank you. And if we don't have a resource, you're always welcome to let us know, and we will either have it or we'll work with you to create it. So, I love both of your answers because I think they kind of speak to this LTG question again. I think both of your answers sort of focused on more of the community building components and the people that you meet along the way, which I think is unique to the fellowship compared to the grant. I think in the interest of time, I will ask this final question. What advice do you have for prospective fellowship applicants? So there's some folks in the room, or everyone in the room here is interested or hopefully interested in applying to a fellowship this year. So do you have any advice for folks who are applying?
I think my advice would like a good piece of advice and something that I followed is talk to someone about your application before you submit it. So talk to a colleague in your department. And I think it will really help because I think sometimes we think that we have really kind of niche ideas, or maybe you're wondering is something is a big enough thing to really investigate, or is it too small or something like that. So I think it will give you confidence in your application and encouragement, and I think that's a big part of it. Because I think we're used to being experts in things, and so it's kind of jarring when you realize that you're not yet an expert in this, right? And there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, at the conference I went to, there were some people that have been looking into these questions for 15, 20 more years. So my first one would be to talk to someone. And my second point might be kind of obvious, I'm not sure, but I was really interested in thinking about questions of SoTL using the micro, meso, macro, mega framework we talked about in one of the communities of practice. I had been thinking that there were different kinds of impacts and different kinds of questions that we ask based on where we think our impact is. But I found it quite helpful to frame my questions and ideas as being like micro, like at the individual researcher, meso at like a departmental level, institutional, and then like larger questions. So sometimes you have an idea that could actually kind of go through different levels. So thinking about where the impact is that you want to make, or the question that you have, and where it could be addressed might help as you think through the what you're putting together for the application.
Thanks, Terry. That's really helpful. And I definitely support the idea of getting multiple eyes on the application.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully the prompts in the research proposal template now are also going to be helpful for folks as they prepare. Yukari, any advice?
Yeah, I agree with asking somebody to review your applications really before, like, and also I feel like you have to tell your own story, like who you are as an educator and what authenticity you can bring to the table. And to the point Terry already made, like meso and micro and macro and two father, because it's 3 years program. Ours are 2 years, 3 years, extra 1 year. You can do so many things. So perhaps like short term and long term outcomes. Maybe I would anticipate more of the knowledge mobilization at the end. Because in 2 years, you may take a first year for the REB and second year just do your job, but like third year should be a really interesting knowledge mobilization activity time. So I'd love to have like creative knowledge mobilization, not just going to the conference. It's important to go to the conference for sure, 100%, but maybe like more than that, what you can do. And also, I'm kind of jealous that because I didn't have a great community of practice because I'm a first time. Now you have so many people, previous cohort and here. So I would ask what are you gonna bring to the community of practice? What contributions you can make, like in what angles? Maybe you are so good at quantitative research, you are so good at the architectural science, I don't know, but like you may know something that you can bring to the table so you can share and also learn from each other. Maybe like this reciprocal community of practice. And I'm still curious how the community of practice model can be implemented very closely in teaching fellowship group. So maybe Terry is going to come back as a senior fellows and community practice. But anyways,
Yeah.
so like what are you going to bring back to the community might be a really good point to put into your application.
Awesome. Thanks, Yukar. Yeah, I really love that answer because I think it speaks to a bunch of different things. I think the dissemination piece, at least from the chemistry background, it's like dissemination is sort of the last thing that you think about. But I think for like SoTL projects, it's really something that I think we want to prioritize is not just what you learn from the project, but also how you're going to take what you learn and mobilize it into something that people can use, whether that be workshops, resources. And yeah, I think also just having a diversity of folks in the COP and different types of expertise. I think by the time the new cohort starts, we should have like, I think, like at least eight people present for the COPs moving forward. So that'll be really exciting. All right. I think that is it for now. If people have any more questions, I'm sure Terry and Yukari are happy to chat over email if you wanted to reach out over email. But for now, I will move on to our closing slides. So everything that you need is on our website, and this recording will also be shared on the website in the coming days and weeks. But all the details about how to apply the fellowship as a whole, that's all on the website. You're also always welcome to reach out to me with any questions about the application process. My email's right there. One thing I forgot to do earlier was just quickly share the application form. So I'll do that now if that's okay with everyone. So the application form is a Google form and has all the details that you'll need at the top. And it's a one-page form, your name, faculty, whether it's your project will focus on teaching and learning with Gen AI, so your priority focus areas. And then there are these questions where you'll upload your proposal. The templates are there if you want, or so you can use the templates, budget form, CV, and letter of support from your dean. So that's all there. Just wanted to make sure that people use the Google form when uploading their applications. Alrighty. I think this is the last slide. So any final questions, folks? Any final questions, folks? If not, thank you. Or join me in thanking Yukari and Terry again for their time. I'll stick around for a few more minutes if people have any questions. But if not, we look forward to receiving your applications and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Yukari.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank you both. That was fun. Thanks, John. I'm gonna. Oh, I just saw your chat message. Awesome. If you have any questions about any of the other, like the grants that we mentioned, the learning and teaching grants, feel free to reach out to if that's something that you're thinking of in the near future. Awesome. Take care. Nice to meet you.